And good evening. I'd like to call to order the study session of the Board of Education for today, Tuesday, February 11th, 2020. Ms. Smith, may we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Rich.
Present.
Ms. Weems.
I am here.
I myself here. Mr. Johnson.
I am here as well.
And we have Ms. Cummings, Ms. Green, and Mr. Mukamal out. Hopefully Ms. Green will feel better after her surgery recovery.
Thank you. Do we have a quorum, ma'am?
Yes, you do.
All right. At this point, we'd like to do the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'd like to personally ask Mr. John Reeby to come and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. There's a reason for that.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, John. Okay, can we do under items for the President, approval of agenda? Is there a motion?
I'd like to move to amend the agenda to remove action item 9B, which is board protocols, meetings, and ethics, the second reading, as a result of us not having more representation amongst the board. So I move to approve the agenda with the deletion of item 9B.
Support.
It has been moved by Terry to remove board protocols, meetings, and ethics, the second reading under action items, and supported by Zach. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, take a vote on that. All in favor?
Aye.
I myself, any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. And at this point, I'd like to move on to announcements. Welcome to the February 11th Farmington Board of Education meeting. Student count day is tomorrow, February 12th. Please do all you can to assure that your students are present. The district will be closed for February break on February 17th and 18th, and school will reconvene on February 19th. Just so you know, the next Board of Education will be held here on February 25th, 2020 at 6 p.m. The meeting is open to the public and will be cablecast live here on TV 10. Public request cards are available and in the back of the room. If you would like to speak during public comments, please feel free to fill out a card and place it in the ceramic bowl, which is right here in the front. Public comments may be shared after the legislative update. We'd also ask you to please remember to silence all cell phones and electronic devices at this time. In addition, out of courtesy to those folks in the audience, we ask that you refrain from sidebar conversations and please step out in the hallway if you feel the need to carry on a conversation. We thank you for your cooperation. And with that, I'm going to turn over to Angie for items from the Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. We have our correspondence happens to be from Ms. Blackman regarding 8th grade mock interviews, Ms. Blockman regarding 8th grade interviews again, Ms. Blockman correcting 8th grade mock interviews. So we had those, and then we also received from State Representative from the 40th District, Mari McNugian, letters to all the school board members, all trustees, congratulating us on being board members. And communications are acknowledged, and when appropriate, a response is provided.
Great, thank you very much. We're going to turn to a legislative update now from Zach Rich. Zach.
Yes, so on Thursday, February 6th, there was a convening of the joint session of the House and Senate Appropriations Committees, looking over the governor's executive budget recommendations for fiscal year 2021. That budget reflects the governor's priorities, and part of that included the budget for the fiscal year 2021 on the school aid front of $15.9 billion, which is a 4.9% increase over the fiscal year 2020 budget. Currently, community colleges remain fully funded with school aid fund dollars, and the governor's proposal continues the movement towards a weighted funding formula and provides $415 million for this goal. So that equates to about a $290 million increase base per pupil funding distributed. And so that means the minimum funding allowance will increase to $8,336 and $8,679 for districts at the maximum. So this equals about $150 to $225 per pupil increase. And it also reduces that gap between the highest and lowest funded districts to $343, which is, it's still a big difference, but it's getting that margin closer together. That's the big part. After we had the governor's state of the state, looking at what the priorities are for the next year, we're going to start seeing the budget cycle start up again with people debating in the legislature what exactly we're going to be seeing over the next year. So that's all I have at this point in time.
Great, thank you, Zach. At this point, we'll turn to, I'm sorry, Ms. Weems.
Do you mind if I just add a couple things? So, thank you for providing that great detail. The one thing I just did want to add, just so that the public is aware, is although there is an increase, which is great, and it feels like Christmas a bit, some of that has to go back to the state, right, to pay for MIPSR. So it's sort of an in and an out. Wanted to make sure that that was reflected. And then also wanted to thank the governor for including a new section providing reimbursements to teachers for up to $250 for covering the out-of-pocket expenses that many teachers actually spend more than that, but to reimburse them through some sort of purchasing program. I'm not sure how that's going to work in practice. It's new, but I thought that I really appreciated seeing that addition. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, moving on to public comments, and I am staring at the ceramic bowl at this point, and it appears that nothing is in there, and I don't see anyone moving forward, and people are shaking their heads, so no problem. We will have opened, and now we are closing public comment, and we're going to turn to district updates, and I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Bob Herrera.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to move to the podium. Well, it is a small group tonight. I would just like to kind of frame this presentation tonight as my 7th month in the district, and we're going to recap, some of the facts of the district in terms of enrollment, staff, and some of our other trend data very quickly. It's information the board, I'm certain the board's familiar with, but this presentation is also intended for the community as well. And then in the second half of the presentation, we'll begin to discuss our next steps in our strategic planning process and where we'll be headed this spring in our efforts to take a look at our learning environments and seek out what the future for Farmington Public School will be. So the first slide, again, is from the board's presentation. As you went through the budgeting process, you're very familiar with this slide as it shows how our funding is divided up within the district. The chart to the left, I think, is particularly interesting in terms of taking a look at where the bulk of our revenues go. As you can see, close to 85% of our operating expenditures go towards salary and wages. So we are in the business of educating students, and those direct services to our students are very important to us. So we try to prioritize the money going to the classroom. And you can see from the funding source budget, you can see how we collect our revenues, our membership revenue from the state, categorical revenue would be from state-funded programs, eligibility grants, federal revenues would be everything from special education to certain federal funds through the state. And then our local property revenues make up about 29% of our budget based on the funding formula our state uses, where we are required to pass 18 mills non-homestead, and so that stays locally, and then we receive the difference from the state on that foundation allowance that you were just talking about. Does that make sense? Yep, certainly a familiar conversation for boards of education. Our pupil account, this, as we mentioned, account date is coming up, and where we currently are in our K-5 schools, we have 8 K-5 schools. We serve about 3,652 students. Middle schools, 6 through 8, we have 3, and we serve a little over 1,800 students. We have 1 K-8 building that serves a little over 1,700 students. And then we have 2 high schools and 1 alternative high school that serves just under 3,000 students, or just over 2,900 students. Yes?
I just want to clarify, it's just over 700, correct? Not 1,700.
Oh, sorry, yes, 700. That's 717. My mistake. That would have upped our revenue quite a bit there.
We're going to hold you to the 1,700.
Well, we'll be working on expanding our programming, so. So special services, that's ISD programs and some of our center-based programs. We talk about there, we serve approximately 100 students there. At this point in time, our total students served is 9,211. Early Childhood Center, this is, I think, something for the board to pay particular attention, because it will give good indication of what our enrollment will be and the new families moving in and students we serve. So we have, full-time, we serve 90 students, part-time, we serve 218 students. And then grant programs, which would be like MSRP, the Readiness Program, we serve about 131 students. In the district total, our total number of staff in the district is 1,220, and our total number of teachers in the district is 681. Our district ethnic distribution is as reads. We have 25% African American, 14.5% Asian, just a little over 3.5% Hispanic, and 52% white, and a little over 4% multiracial. So we certainly are a diverse school district. Some of the quick facts that the district typically highlights in terms of points of pride is 94% graduation rate, although I would like to inform the board that graduation rates can be reported a couple different ways in the state that you may see, because you have 4-year, 5-year, and 6-year cohorts that you have an opportunity to report. I believe this is our 4-year cohort graduation. So I'm going to assume that if we were to take a look at our 6-year graduation rate, it would be much higher. We have, along with our IB program, we are also a candidate for school for our primary school, and we're considered a certificate program for the middle years program. And we were just authorized to run a career-related program out of CTE. Highly qualified teaching staff. This is one of the things we'll talk about in our strategic planning in terms of the level of education of our staff. We have close to 84% of our teachers have a master's degree. 4% have a bachelor's, about 0.5% have doctorates, and about 4% have ed specialist degrees. So one of the things we're going to talk about in the reform plan is, as you take a look at the educational background of the employees that work in the district, teachers mainly, we're kind of maybe have not been taking advantage of their technical knowledge and the sense of agency with our teachers. So the reform plan is going to be much more along the lines of innovative environments and growing a culture of innovation, because we need to take advantage of all the technical knowledge and formal education that our teachers have, rather than giving them very prescriptive curriculums and tasks to do. So we're going to talk about that a little bit in the near future, and that's been a different perspective on school reform over the past 4 or 5 years. Career and technical education programs. We boast one of the largest CTE programs in Oakland County. We have some plans for next year to try to take a look at some more early college pathways in our CTE program as well. We're looking for some partner community colleges right now. And I just talked to our new state and federal program director, Mr. Weeks, and he had conversation with some of our community colleges. So we're going to look at if we can formalize some pathways for our students, and that would be very beneficial to our students. And then in AP and dual enrollment, we have about 750 students that have taken advanced placement or dual enrollment, which probably is better known as early college classes, advancing their education. Remember, the district will pick up the tab for, up to 10 courses that students may take between their 9th and 10th grade year that are college courses. Some of our data points that we usually have as a primary dashboard on the standardized test, which we know that we're through compliance with our Michigan Department of Education. ELA, and this, we have it broken up for the board just in terms of our district percent proficiencies, the county percent proficiency, and the state percent proficiency. And then we've also included our county rank out of 14 LEAs. Again, that's information that I know Dr. Johnson provided you with earlier this school year, but we just wanted to include it as part of our district update in terms of our data snapshot. Excuse me. So as we move more towards the future for Farmington Public Schools, some of the questions you'll hear me throwing out in front of the board, in front of our school community and our teaching staff is, how are we preparing our next generation, knowing students come from diverse backgrounds? We've talked quite a bit about that, of how we're going to address all of our students' needs, and how we're addressing the equity and inclusion issues in the district that all communities face with when they have diverse populations. Another guiding question is, how can we effectively ensure all student success with our current one-size-fits-all model? We know we really struggle in terms of trying to address all individual student needs when we have a one-size-fits-all model for instruction and programming. So how can we revisit that? How could we think through that and maybe look through that through a different lens? And how can we meet each student's individual learning and personal needs? That's one of the key things, is how do we differentiate, how do we address all the individual learning needs for our students so we can ensure all their success. That would be students that struggle to make benchmark, and also our academically talented or accelerated students. How are we making sure that we're still challenging those students? Those are some of the things we need to consider as a school district as we move forward with any programming or any delivery models that we would consider in the future. So some factors to consider. These are 5 areas that will certainly change or impact educational systems or organizations in the next 10 years. One of the driving factors are automating choices. We know we have machine intelligence or artificial intelligence, and it's automating many aspects of our lives. How will that impact schools and how we serve students as we have all this additional machine intelligence? Civic superpowers. Okay, we know that we have engaged, citizens are becoming more engaged, and civic organizations are seeking to rebalance power, certainly within communities and at the state level. Accelerating brains. Now we know our children and adults will have more increasing access to tools and insights that are reshaping our brains in intended and unintended ways. The other piece, toxic narratives, and we talk a lot about this. Toxic narratives are often seen as the foundations or things that create mental health issues. And so how will our children, as they go through school and grow up to be adults, handle toxic narratives? And those are the outdated and misaligned systems and metrics of success that are contributing to chronic health issues. So one of the things we talk about quite frequently in school districts is standardized testing the only measure we should consider in a school district in terms of developing the type of students we hope to. So what are those structures? And those are things we talk a lot politically with our State Board of Education in terms of, how should schools be judged? Should it just be on standardized tests, or should there other metrics that determine our success in the type of students that we're producing? Remaking geographies. Communities are working to remake themselves in the face of deep transitions. So we know a lot of communities are looking to bring in new workforce and economic growth, and also families and new housing. So when our students are older, how will they seek out a place to live, and how will they choose that, and how will they embed themselves in communities that are trying to reinvent themselves, so to speak. So in the future, these are some of the driving questions that many school districts are considering as they determine what type of learning environments and what characters and attributes our kids are going to have as adults so they can be successful. Any questions or comments on that? This is something we're going to have engaged in a conversation a lot more here over the spring as we kind of develop this future vision for the district. So the strategic planning process that I'm recommending for the Board of Education to consider, year one is basically just laying the foundation for this. We know we have to have a strong foundation if we hope to have sustainability with the strategic planning piece. So how would we initiate a district-wide effort to create a solid base to support a transformational system? So that's going to be the very first thing, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Year two, how do we build on that foundation that we set? How do we create the environment? So this is more of a culture type thing for student-centered learning practices so that we can address all their learning needs. And then year three, how do we create and reinforce these transformational structures? And that's where we talk about the sustainability part of this and increasing our teacher agency and student agency so that we have more innovation in the district and we're growing internally rather than always looking for a vendor or a program to grab onto. So year one, the initial start is we know we need to start out with that vision. Now the district has a mission and vision statement. This vision is a little bit different because we want to talk about specifically what are the characteristics and attributes that we want our students leaving our school system with. So we would call that Portrait of a Lifelong Learner. We'll be engaging in that process in April and May. The Portrait of a Lifelong Learner is basically a collective vision that articulates the community's aspiration for all students. So this is something that we talk about as well. When we talk about visioning for the district, that should not come from the educators in the district, okay? The Board of Education and the community determine the vision for the district regarding what type of students you would like to see produced from your school system. Then it's our job to put the programming in place to build those characteristics and attributes and help the students reach those outcomes. Does that make sense? So, excuse me, April, May, we will be looking for a group of about 50 on a committee. 25 will probably be within our school committee and 25 will be from the community. If you happen to be a community member here and you're also at this board meeting tonight, you'll probably be recruited before you leave, unless you leave early.
Lock the doors.
Directly
So-
not making eye contact.
I know, right? They
So
all
this,
turned around.
so this, basically this group will actually work through a process which will, and it's a fairly intense process, and it is a true commitment. It's about three 2-day back-to-back trainings throughout the spring to engage in this process with the community and out doing focus groups and surveys, and then collectively this group of 50 will come back and determine what this portrait of our lifelong learner is. But also, they're going to consider those future focus drivers as well as we develop this portrait of our lifelong learner in terms of what kind of skills and attributes they would need. So then we'll have a strategic direction for the redesign of the overall educational experience for our students. So again, it starts with that vision, and that's from the community, the first bullet point. And the second bullet point would be our work then, as educators in the school district, to redesign and figure out what the overall educational experience for our students need to be that would lead to those outcomes, or that portrait of our lifelong learner. Okay? The other thing, year one, we know that we have to have strong technical knowledge and leadership capacity to sustain a reform that's going to be more innovative or more complex than some of the reforms the district's considered in the past. So we'll establish a leadership development process that identifies, trains leaders at the classroom, school, and district level. So we're gonna have teacher leaders, we'll have, of course, our building principals will be leaders, and we'll have district central office leaders, all trained in the leadership skills that will take to support and sustain a reform initiative that's more of an innovative reform, rather than some of our traditional reforms. That group will consist of, I believe, 80-plus folks, excuse me, and they'll be trained yet this spring on back-to-back. It's actually 8 days of training that we'll go through as we prepare for the work for next year. A couple of those days will take place in June, but we hope to get at least 6 of them in before the end of the school year. Okay? So that brings us to the gift that I left you right in front of you. We have our initial activity is the book study and what school could be. So I would encourage you to begin reading that, certainly at your own pace. I would like to arrange time to meet with the board from time to time. It would probably be appropriate for us to have a retreat to do a little bit of reflection on the book, because it really sets the stage for what we could become. So basically, it doesn't tell us what we should become. It talks about what we could become, but it mostly outlines what has not worked in education. And it talks about maybe saying goodbye to some of these old structures and ideas that have really limited our ability to move forward. And I think that'll be good information from our board. That'll be the same book that our district leadership cohort will read, and it will also be part of a book review that will lead the development of our lifelong learner portrait. They won't necessarily have to read the full book, but they will be working off the contents within the book. Any questions? That's nice when I finally get to hand out homework assignment again. It's been a long time.
Yeah, I thought Farmington was done giving me homework assignments.
Angie, go ahead.
I appreciate all the hard work that you've put through with doing this. It's about time we got an administrator or a leader that would put us to task to let us know what we need to be doing. This will be good reading material on my flight on the 19th. I don't know if you are doing pop quizzes or finals, but I will be prepared. I do appreciate all that you've done in getting us and moving us forward. We have needed this for quite some time, and I appreciate all the work that you've done. You've thought of not only us as a board, including us, which means we are almost back to the 3-tier process. You have included our community as well as our staff, so well done, Dr. Herrera.
No,
Thank you.
And we do have our first meeting with the 3 pillars coming up. I think we sent out invites for the first 3-pillar meeting as well. So I'm new to that process, but I'm looking forward to our first meeting.
And so, like you stated, we do have 2 volunteers in the back that are going to be on this committee. I see one with her head down, but she's been an advocate throughout this district for quite some time. I would like to see her take part
Yep.
in being involved in this too, as a member of this community for as long as she's been. Well, she got her homework back there too, I see. So, yeah, so thank you again.
So year 2, so right when we come back from summer break, we'll begin to take a look. So we'll have an idea of what our vision needs to be, and we'll know what this portrait of our lifelong learner is. From the administrative perspective, we'll understand what these competencies and skills that we'll need to actually help lead and sustain a reform more towards innovation, which is going to be new to the district. And so now we need to begin by just figuring out where we're really at. So when we come back September, October, we will do basically an audit of the district on assessing our current conditions so we know where to start. The essential elements for scaling more towards a student learning environment is, of course, we have our vision, then we have to focus on our culture. Transparency is a key to this. So vision, culture, and transparency are the 3 big ones to more innovative reforms, and especially as you work with the community. And the other piece is what I've been preaching to you guys since I came in an interview. We have to be focused on our systems-wide alignment. It's not just that we have to have systems and protocols, but they have to all be aligned, and they have to support each other so we're not fragmented. The systems-wide alignment, that's where the business that we'll be working on includes 10 factors: curriculum, instruction, assessment. We know that's the heart of teaching and learning. Learning environments, that means our delivery systems. How are we delivering and facilitating student learning? Students, oops. Oh. Yeah. Yes. I left the community behind, but I know the board's got the PowerPoint. So student supports, those are those social, emotional, and behavior supports. How do they fit into this? Do we have to look at professional development a different way than we have in the past? We've been conducting it. Leadership development. How intentional are we at developing leaders, and what skills and attributes do we want our leaders to possess? Technology, where with technology integration and technology policies in the district. Our data system, certainly, because how are we managing all this to show evidence that we're moving forward? And then last but not least, we have to maintain strong strategic community partnerships. And so those are the areas we'll be assessing, because we know those are all key to a sustainable reform initiative. So we'll have those current conditions completed between September and October, and then we'll begin to know how to build from those. So year 2, the remainder of the year, hopefully we'll begin this process in December and January, and that's where we begin to put the mechanics to all this and start talking about the first phases of implementation and really beginning some of this work. Some of the areas that we will focus on in terms of tooling for learning environments is we talk about our children and our kiddos having a growth mindset. Where are the adults in the district with growth mindset? And how do we handle innovation, and how do we gear ourselves to take risk and commit to innovations? Brain literacy to support mindset, classroom shared vision, and a code of collaboration. We know that we have to have very collaborative environments, not only for our students, but our teachers as well. What are our SOPs, our standard operating procedures? I know Dr. Johnson's working on a lot of those mechanics in the curriculum management plan that we'll bring forward to the board as it continues to progress. What's the continuum of our expert learner? In other words, how are we moving forward and showing evidence that we're reaching those outcomes from the portrait of a lifelong learner? What is our universal design for learning framework? In other words, how are we really meeting all students' individual needs and making sure they're reaching their growth? Last but not least, there's the personal learner profiles and learning plans. And again, as far as culture goes, student agency and voice and choice. That's the biggest one. We want our students to begin to have a voice and a choice in their learning, and we want them to have more ownership of their learning, or that sense of agency. So those are some of the areas we'll focus on in terms of building this foundation year 1, and those are actually classroom strategies and building strategies we can begin to commit to and focus on to help grow that. Okay? If it doesn't move anymore, Kim, does that mean it's over? Okay, any questions? It's almost that simple. Just kidding. But it, this is, I would say that, certainly the remainder of this year, it's very exciting work to begin to engage in when you really start talking about this visioning. And for me, it's a great opportunity to finally have a real chance to talk about teaching and learning with the community, and talking about what our schools can become and what they, like I said, just like the book, what our schools could become. So let's bring the school community on that, and let's come to consensus on what that is, and then we have the next steps to get moving. So very much looking forward to this work. It's been a great 7 months, but I think this is the part that as superintendents we believe you hired us for. And so I've been looking forward, I've been patiently waiting for the day where we can begin to move forward on this work, and really working more collaborative with our teaching staff and our administrators on what we all signed up for to begin with.
Great, thank you very much. Any questions from the board for Dr. Herrera?
Are these ours to keep?
Those are yours.
Oh, okay, thank you.
I want to say thank you for the past 7 months. I believe you are doing the right thing to right this ship and put us on the path to success. The only surprise I've had with that book is it wasn't thicker, talking about the things where schools have failed over the past few years, so.
Yeah, and don't let this secret out, but there are like 2 more books in this strategic planning process for the board as we reach each phase, so we'll keep you busy.
Gotcha. Well, thank you very much, and we appreciate everything you've been doing.
Okay, no, thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to present tonight.
With that, we're going to move on to reports from board committees. And tonight we've got the Academic Excellence Strategic Planning Communications Committee, and I'm going to turn that over to Terry.
I'm not on that.
We have,
They didn't meet.
Just wait.
It was this morning.
Oh, it was canceled. Well, then, not only am I not going to turn it over to Terry,
I'm also not on that.
and she's not on that committee, so there you go. Thank you. I'm just going to move on since we have no report. Is that correct? Okay. Let's go to discussion items, and we're going to have a review of the boardroom transition plan. And I see Mr. John Reeby approaching the podium.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So we've been talking about this for a little bit, but the current boardroom really needs to have the audio-visual equipment replaced because it's really past its useful life. It's become undependable and problematic to maintain and operate on a consistent basis. And to keep this boardroom operational in the short term, we're going to have Advanced Lighting and Sound Company replace a few cameras so we can stay operational until a decision's made to either stay here or move over to Maxfield Education Center. And the board table that you're sitting at is beyond its useful life and needs to be replaced. There's areas of delamination, and it's missing the appropriate computer technology as far as electricity and plugins and so forth, and the microphones are very old. And also, this boardroom in its current state is small for large gatherings, and many times the community members have to stand outside in the halls for awards and recognitions night. So, back in 2010, when the 10-mile building was a 10-mile building, we remodeled that space to Maxfield Education Center, and at that point, the old Science Center was remodeled to a large group gathering space and was to double as the boardroom back in 2010. And this space provides a larger venue with a layout that's more conducive to public gatherings than this current boardroom. It was designed with the infrastructure to support a boardroom, so the power lines are underneath the floor. There's a production room and all that kind of stuff to support a new boardroom. But with that space, you would have to purchase a new board table, because it would be my opinion that this table is old enough that it won't transport very well. I think it's just going to come apart. We ran into that at the high schools. We were trying to move big circulations desks when we were doing the remodeling. The spaces over at MEC is also used for special events. They're taped and then broadcast. So what we have to do is we have to bring TV 10 and set up over there, so it's a portable setup. If we were to make that the boardroom with the new audio video equipment, it would have all the equipment to support a live broadcast there. So it would be a self-contained space for 2 purposes. So there's really 2 options. Option 1 is to remain here. The boardroom to remain here. You'd have to purchase new audio equipment, new video equipment, and it would be optional if you wanted to replace the desk. But if you did, the total estimated cost would be about $58,000. If you were to not replace the desk, you could save about $12,000 estimated. The next option would be to move over to Maxfield Education Center. You'd have to buy the same audio equipment, the same video equipment, but you would have to buy a board table. It would be the same cost of $58,000. So either way, the expense is about the same. The schedule for both options are the same. If you were to approve this in February, then we could order the equipment in March and get everything set up for the first board meeting in August or September. So either way, the schedule is about the same.
Have you concluded your?
Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions from Ms. Smith? Angie?
First question, you said this was looked into in 2010. Who all knew about this?
Can I interject on that one?
Sure.
That's a great question, and I can tell you, I was not aware of this. I was on what was the previous Building and Site Committee, and this was not brought up until probably October of last year. Is that
Yeah,
pretty close to accurate?
yeah, that's accurate.
So,
I don't think there's an, Angie, Ms. Smith, I don't think there's an administrator here.
okay.
There might be one.
Because the reason I'm asking is because there's a lot of questions that I do like the idea, because we do need safety issues, not only for, coming in and out of here, fire marshals, what have you, the boardroom can be packed, but also for the safety of all of us. There's one way in and one way out. The other, where I'm going with this is too, we do have other people using that building. So where would our PTAs go? And where would our other groups go? Would they still have access to that building? Would they have access to using the facility for their meeting nights or whatever? Where would they go? That's my question.
It would be similar to this space. I mean, you just have this little boardroom, the board table area that wouldn't be accessible, but it's still available for large groups
Okay,
and
good.
gatherings
Okay,
and can be scheduled.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Good. Zach?
So like the Super Saturdays tutoring can still be done
Right.
there without issue?
Well, I mean, you're gonna lose that little bit of space. I'm gonna be honest with you. You can have a new board table there.
Okay.
So there'll be some space lost from that aspect. But they could sit at the new board table too.
Okay. The other part is just reminding community members, because I know we've discussed this as a board, what we were looking at doing with this space. Should we be moving the board out of this area, and how that will be beneficial for our administrative team and our I know Dr. Johnson's team with curriculum and working in this space as well.
Derek?
So, I just want to get grounded in the overall plan for adult space across the district. So, if we were to move, and it makes sense from a financial perspective, it's the same cost regardless of whether we stay here or move. So, appreciate that, equipment and things need to be upgraded. But what I'm trying to get a sense of is what the plan is for adult space overall. At one point, we were looking to move from this area, and I thought that there was a plan to maybe consolidate some space, that maybe we're looking to downsize some space. So I'm trying to get an appreciation before we just start moving ahead with plans about what the overall landscape for adult space is expected to look like.
So if you were to move over to MEC, that would free up this space. There's been some preliminary architectural planning on what this space could be by consolidating all the instructional people together for collaboration. There's some financial constraints with that. So moving forward, we need to figure out the finances on that. Does that
So-
answer your question?
It does, but I'd like to, before things started moving, I'd like to make sure that we had a plan in place in total, because I get the sense that, once we start moving down a path, we kind of pigeonhole ourselves into,
Well, if you move over to MEC, if you ever want to do something with the space, you're not going to pay for things twice, because if you install it here and ultimately decide to go to Maxfield, then you're going to have to disassemble this and move it over to there. So there'll be some duplication of costs if the space was to get remodeled in the future.
Right, so if I think I hear what you're saying is do we have an idea of how we would use this space with staff?
And longer term, our plan to stay here and be in this place. I mean, just
Well,
very shortly, we
yeah.
were, their plans they fell through,
Correct.
right? So what is our plan relative to our space here in this area and the potential, or there used to be potential for it to be developed. What I'm trying to get a sense of is, what our future plans are with respect to adult space in terms of buildings and location.
Right, and I don't know that we have a vision for that thought out to that extent. I think it was, when we initially had talked about this, the idea was if the board moved to the 10 Mile building, then this would be available space. However, at this time, we're not making the same level of commitment to address the needs of this building, which would limit the use of this space because we wouldn't have the mechanical systems to help support offices in here. And so this would have to just be more of a multi-purpose area and more collaborative space, and we might be able to set a handful of cubicles up in here and bring some folks over. But I would have to say that at this point in time, we're kind of all over in terms of how we're assigned to space between here and Maxfield. And having this space, I'm certain that, we could find a very good use for it. We've added a director of instruction here. We're currently taking a look at the structure of our instructional leaders and their roles and responsibilities. We have the position for the assistant superintendent for innovation and strategic initiatives that we'll be posting here in the next week. And so, where would that person be located, and who would they supervise and support? So I think we're going to have to, if the board decides to move, I think we'll have to become more focused and intentional on how we can use this space, considering that it's going to have limitations because we're not going to invest in the building at this time. Now, I haven't had a discussion with the facilities committee in terms of, when or what would be the triggering event that would have us begin to reinvest in this building. I don't know what that would look like, and we haven't even begun to have those discussions, so I haven't overplanned for utilizing of this space, but I do note that there would be a lot of conveniences if we had at least 4 or 5 more people in this building. We would be much more effective and efficient in terms of having the proximity to talk together and work together on a daily basis. That would be helpful. So not a full plan yet. I'm sorry.
Good, Terry?
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, thank you, John.
Good, thank you.
Wait. Before you leave,
Okay.
kind of saddens me to say this, but tomorrow is John Reeby's last day with this district. I'm going to read what's here, and I'm going to say a few words myself, but this evening we'd like to thank John Reeby, the district's facility director, for the last 9 years of serving this district. John's last day at this district is tomorrow, and he's accepted a position of Director of Capital Improvements, Maintenance, and Operations for Huron Valley Schools. Prior to joining Farmington Public Schools, he was an architectural consultant specializing in K-12 school designs for 25 years. And, here's the good part, John's also a proud graduate of North Farmington High School. John's well liked by everyone in the district and will be missed. We know that you're not going to miss the 4:30 a.m. wake-up calls for snow days, which we might just have in a few days. But we want to wish you well in your adventures and your new adventure, and we want you to know that you're appreciated here in Farmington Public Schools. I personally want to say I've worked closer with you than anyone else since I've been on this board, with the bond and through building and site at the time, and always a pleasure. John Reeby is a man that I've never seen him upset. He's very even-keeled, very straightforward. I personally want to thank you for all the work you've done. It has been a true pleasure dealing with you over the last few years, and the words that were said just really can't describe what you've done in this district, and thank you very much. So I just wanted to say that, and you're going to be missed.
Thank you for the kind words. I'm going to miss Farmington Schools. It was a great opportunity, and being a graduate from elementary school all the way through high school, still a Farmington guy, so I miss working with the Board of Education.
Angie?
John, I want to personally thank you for, not many people know what's done behind scenes by board members and people in this community and administrators. For the past couple of years, not many people know this because I don't brag about it and you've never said a word. But I feed 21 families for 2.5 months at Beachview Elementary. And I could pick up the phone and call you or Jim Pierce, and you would have your people come with a district truck and help get that food over to those students and those families. I'm gonna miss that. Thank you for, because now I gotta find somebody that's gonna help me get that food. But all jokes aside, I'm gonna miss the fact that I could pick up the phone and say, John, I'm feeding kids, or John, I need you to help me get this done to take over to a school. I appreciate all the work that you've done. You and Jim going out of the way by getting rolling bookshelves for FAPN on Saturdays. I can say, John, we got some issues in our bathrooms, and you're there. I can say I've seen you get a little heated at times, but it would be funny, but I'm gonna miss you. And I wish you well with all of your endeavors. Stay in touch. This is still home. So good luck and congratulations.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you. We're going to turn this over to Dr. Johnson regarding Positive Culture Handbook. Dr. Aaron Johnson.
Good evening. So, I don't have anything additional to report with regard to the Positive Culture Handbook. If you have any other questions that you might.
Gotta make a motion.
Yep, before we do, is there a motion someone would like to?
I move that the Board of Education approve the FPS Positive Culture Handbook as presented.
Support.
It's been moved by Angie, supported by Zach, that the Board of Education approve the FPS, Farmington Public School Positive Culture Handbook as presented. Is there any discussion? Terry?
I had several questions on the handbook that I appreciate you walking through and answering prior to this meeting, so thank you very much. I just wanted to acknowledge that. Subsequent to you answering those questions, I had more questions, and you followed up and answered those. In general, there are some areas where I struggled here, to be honest with you, just because, you know, I'm used to a different, you know, perspective with respect to discipline.
Yes.
I understand what the state requires and
Yeah.
how we're adhering to what the state requires, and I also appreciate the levels that administrators have and the individuality, if you will, that is afforded to administrators in administering discipline, and I think that that's the right answer. So for all of those reasons, including how you've walked me through, I support this, and thank you for that.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Smith, can we do a roll call?
Mr. Rich,
Yes.
Ms. Weems,
Yes.
I myself, yes. Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
it passes.
Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you, Dr. Johnson, for all the hard work you and your team did on this, and I think it'll be a good thing for the entire district, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
At this point, we're going to move into the consent agenda. Zach?
I move that the Board of Education approve the February 11th, 2020 consent agenda as follows. A, the approval of minutes, which is the January 28th, 2020 regular meeting, and B, appointment of legal representation 2019-2020.
Support.
It's been moved by Zach, supported by Angie, that the consent agenda, which was stated approval of minutes of the January 28th regular meeting and the appointment of Thurn Law Firm be approved. Any discussion? Seeing none. Ms. Smith? Give a roll call.
Ms. Weems?
Yes.
Mr. Rich?
Yes.
I myself, yes. Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
It passes.
Okay, great. Reports from board representatives. Any reports from board representatives? Seeing none. I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Herrera for superintendent announcements.
Yeah, one quick announcement. I've taken up enough of the board's time this evening, but just to let the board know, I just recently was invited to the governor's mansion on Thursday. I think there's several superintendents that will be in attendance, so look forward to traveling to Lansing this week.
Hopefully good weather.
Hopefully, that would help. And then just a preview of the next regular meeting. We'll have the PTA council update. We'll have a FAPN update, and then we may be back to ask the board if they're ready to make a decision on the boardroom transition.
Great, thank you very much. A couple of items left here. Any recommendations for future agenda items? Terry?
Yes, given that we tabled the agenda item for today, I'd like to propose that we add that to the next meeting's agenda along with communications, because now I feel like we're a little bit behind. And so, again, we're moving this item. This is the second time we're moving the item, but in the interest of ensuring that our board members who will be responsible for adhering to these board protocols are present and have an opportunity to weigh in, I think it's important to postpone voting on this until everyone is present, or as many people are present as possible, more than the 4 that we have today. I'd also like to add the communications item to next meeting's agenda. And so you guys have that, but I can send it again just so that everybody has it top of their email inbox.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Okay, and that one, I'm just going to ask you guys, move ahead if that's what you want to do. I will not be at the next board meeting, but you'll probably have 6 folks here. And any comments or things that I have, I will share them with you and your committee. Okay, moving on to good and welfare. Is there any good and welfare? Terry?
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. First, just wanted to acknowledge the work that goes into Dine and Dash at Warner. It's a great event. You get to sit and have lunch with your student. Originally, I think it was started by the Proud Dads group, and it's continued for the past several years, at least I think, I want to say a decade. So a great program, and I appreciate the administrators in that building and others who continue to support that. It's a great day for the kids and for the parents. Second, theater was alive and well this weekend. If you didn't get an opportunity to attend the North Farmington High School theater program, Into the Woods, or Warner's Peter Pan Jr., you really missed out. I went to 4 shows this weekend, and Peter Pan was absolutely amazing. I can't say enough about just the arts in general across Farmington Public Schools, whether it's music or theater. I'm just proud to witness all of the good stuff that happens throughout our district. Great performances, and thank you to all of the volunteers, from the students to the parents to the administrators and staff who help, weeks and weeks and weeks, if not months, prior to putting on those huge performances. The next major performance that I'm aware of that's coming up this month is the Black History Program that is scheduled for February 25th of this month. Unfortunately, that's the same day as a board meeting, but I would encourage anyone who is available to attend. Also wanted to recognize Black History Month and the Black History celebrations that are going on across the schools. I witnessed a couple of instances of teachable moments across Lanigan and Wood Creek and many schools, and I just want to applaud everyone who is recognizing this month. Next, FAPN wanted to remind everyone about Super Saturdays and the opportunities for students to volunteer for Super Saturdays. Students get credit with volunteer hours. And so for students who are looking for those volunteer hours so that they can earn those beautiful golden cords for graduation, please don't hesitate to sign up for tutoring. Soon, you'll hear about an opportunity to be entered into a raffle. To the extent that you volunteer for a Saturday, the more times you volunteer, the more opportunities there are to be entered into that raffle. So stay tuned for that. And then finally, nope, not finally, my penultimate statement. I reserve the right to talk more. There is a new scholarship available. There are several scholarships available on the district's website. If you are not familiar, please go to the FPS website, go to the students link, and then click on scholarships. My family has started a $500 scholarship. We'll try to do that annually, and we will try to increase the amount to $1,000 or more every year. The scholarship deadline is March 20th for all of the scholarships that are on that website. Please don't let these scholarship opportunities go unapplied for. That happens often where there aren't applicants to scholarships and they go unclaimed. We don't want that to happen, so I'll be announcing that every board meeting until the March 20th deadline. And then finally, we reached our 100th day of school since our last meeting, and if you don't have elementary school students, you miss out on some really creative, cute kids and all of their dress up for the 100 days. There's lots of posting on social media. My favorite was Gill Elementary, and the post from Mrs. Sullivan and her students, especially kindergarten, first grade, second grade. I mean, they're all cute, but especially the smaller you are, the cuter it is. So congratulations on reaching the 100th day milestone.
Good.
That's it.
Great. Anyone else? Okay, I just, couple things very, very, very briefly. There's still a lot of things going on regarding the bond. Please go out and educate yourself. Please take the opportunity to figure out what's going on and which way you should vote and what's in the best interest of you and this community. Also, as it relates to this coming week, there's potential for snow, and I'm sure most of our students will be looking to my right, to this man right here. Regardless if there's snow or not, please be careful out here. And again, I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight, and especially say goodbye again to my friend John Reeby. Really going to miss you. And with that, is there a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Have a good evening.